Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jonathan Fisher. One of the best ways to increase profitability for any company is to reduce the time required for completing critical processes. And one of the most time consuming aspects of business is human resources. But what if we could cut the time it takes for a new hire to go from day one to productive in half? Well, our guest today has a process to help us achieve just that. Marcus Chan had a successful career leading B2B sales teams for Fortune 500 companies for more than a decade and was a 1% top performer. Today, he's a highly sought after trainer and consultant, teaching other companies and professionals the skills and methods he leveraged to achieve world class results. He's the author of the international best selling book, Six Figure Sales Secrets, and he's trained over 11,000 sales professionals in just the last 5 years. And today, Marcus is going to teach us a proven system that we can use to ramp up your new hires or yourself to maximum performance in the minimum amount of time. Marcus, what an honor to have you on the show today.
Hey, Jonathan, what's going on, man? Great to be here. And you're making me blush here, but I'm just a regular guy who's made a lot of mistakes, whether it was in the field selling myself to running a big sales team. But I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, I can drop some nuggets of wisdom to help people out there really ramp salespeople up faster, get better results as fast as possible in the recession.
Well, it's one of those headaches that everybody in business development deals with, and it is time consuming, as I mentioned. And we look forward to hearing how you're going to share with us ways we can improve on that. But first, I want to give our live audience a friendly reminder. Hey, it's a live show. Take full advantage. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. Don't wait. Go ahead and post your questions right there in the chat, and we'll circle back and have some Ask Me Anything time with Marcus at the end of our conversation. Well, Marcus, I wonder before we jump into the topic of the day, could you share with us exactly how you came by the insights you're going to be sharing with the listener?
Yeah, absolutely. So, early on, I remember, being a brand new rep and just getting started with zero experience. And the way I was trained up was number one, given a manual written by people who had never done the job before, which you can imagine that's a terrible way to train someone, right? And then essentially just kind of thrown into the deep end and said, good luck. Hopefully you can figure it out. And I realized that's obviously not very effective because obviously I really struggled. Now, fortunately, over time, I eventually started to kind of figure it out. And as I started progressing my career, I got promoted to a leadership role. I realized I couldn't do the same thing to the people that are on my team because number one, it took a long time to hire people, right? So by the time I hired the right person, I was already going to be behind. Number two, I also realized if I just threw them in the deep end, did to them what was done to me, it was setting them up for failure. So over time, I started kind of evolving and adding things to kind of the system to put together a really simple, easy way to actually ramp reps up very quickly. And it really starts with there's really four components, really, when you break it down. So to make it very simple, number one, and by the way, it may seem overly simplistic, but we'll go into more detail as well, because a lot of times most people just fail to execute even the simple. So the first piece is understanding, number one, are you effectively hiring the right profile? Do you have the right person you're actually hiring for that role? Because if you aren't clear with that, if you don't have a good proven process for hiring and interviewing, you're going to bring in the wrong people. So even if you build a great back-end system to put them through, they're going to struggle. So having the right profile, the right person you're actually hiring for, the background experience, et cetera, is going to be number one. Then number two is once you're actually into the company, do you have a system to put them through? Right. So I realized very quickly the first 30 to 60, 90 days was absolutely vital. Even in my last company, what I realized was once we open a job requisition, by the time we opened it to hiring someone, placing the role, to them even producing at a level that was kind of okay with the existing system, it was about 157 days, meaning almost 6 months. So if you had an open territory, that means you're already 6 months behind once you open that requisition up. So if I can cut that down as much as possible, it's very, very important. So once they come in, is there a system in place to actually properly train them and onboard for all the key fundamentals that make them highly successful, that provides them the tools and resources, right? So you have that thing in place. But on top of that, you also want to make sure that you also are role playing, which is the third component, role play consistently. So which means, do you have consistent trainings every single week, even throughout, to really test their skills and improve their skills? And the fourth bucket, which is really quite simple, which is really simple as having live call coaching. As a leader, Are you watching the calls? Are you with them live on calls and are you coaching effectively? And when you're able to do this and you do all throughout consistently, not just when they get hired, not just in the first 30 days, but also in segments in the first 60 days, 9 days, 180 days, 365 days. Are you consistently doing it all throughout, even when they're multiple years in? When you start thinking that way, what happens is their skills start to compound and start getting better and better and better. But when you have actually a simple system like that, your chances of success are much higher. But on top of that, not only do they produce at a higher level, you have lower turnover, you have happier reps, and ultimately you have a better culture that comes about when you actually do something like this.
Well, I love that, and I think that the simplicity is at the heart of many of the most successful companies on the planet. Simplifying processes is a maybe takes even more genius than complicated things in some cases.
Mhm.
So we've got a really good four-part approach, four-component roadmap, you could will, template that you've given us here, Marcus. I want to go through with them one by one if we could, and maybe we could kind of
Absolutely.
go maybe point counterpoint in terms of like what typically happens in that
Mhm.
area versus what you're recommending and what you've seen works far better. So let's begin with the first one, having the right person, that the right profile for that position. How are, most companies missing the mark on that front?
So, a lot of time what companies usually do is they put the job description up, they put the post up, so people apply, etc. And then the hiring leader, the hiring manager, the sales leader interviews them, and they don't have an objective way to really see how good that person. They ask them basic interview questions if they have any, and they're like, okay, cool. Like, they seem like they're pretty likable, pretty coachable, and they kind of hire them based off that. Now, if you have naturally really good hire instincts, that might work for you, but most people don't, especially if you never hired people before. So instead, what you really want to have is, or just key, first off, number one, what are key characteristics of past hires you've made that have the thing that you know can make them a rock star rep, right? That could be anything from coachability, adaptability, self-driven, whatever it's going to be. So you uncover those are. But then number two, are you curating interview questions to help them explain to you what those things are, or to that display those characteristics? So, for example, here, instead of saying, "Oh, are you driven?" "Oh, yeah, I'm super driven." Okay, that's a pretty terrible question to ask. Hey, versus give me a specific example where you took major initiative when no one asked you to at work and you displayed exemplary results. And you want to listen carefully. What do they say about that? What type of initiative did they actually take? Right? That's really important. Also, think about even the role by itself. What are specific things or skills that you actually require in the role that make them really excel? So, for example, most salespeople are quite awful at handling objections, asking tough questions. So,
Hmm.
how can you incorporate those type of questions into the role or into the interview? Excuse me. Then that's doing stuff like doing role plays, right? So, for
Hmm.
example, I would actually put them through multiple role plays live in the interview with me to help me vet them out. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it gave me a pretty good idea. So, for example, like I would test them out and say, "Hey, listen, like let's imagine, excuse me, let's imagine you just had a great job doing discovery, you did a great, demo, you present the pricing, they love you, and they say, pricing sounds good, everything sounds good, and they say, let me think about it. Go. What do you say next?" And have them role play out loud with you in that same situation. Now, you're not looking for them to do it perfectly the way you want to do it, but you want to see instinctually on the spot how they respond. They might talk a big game already, but can they actually deliver when you're actually putting them on the spot? And if they flounder, that's not good. Now, the second note is I personally was looking for coachability. So if they didn't do a good job, I would coach them and I want to see how they respond. If they were sound completely defeated after I coached them, they're probably not very coachable. But if they're like, "Wow, that was awesome. Can I try again? Let me try this time with you." Now, the potential might be more coachable because of that.
Love that. Well, I definitely think that there are some ways we can like pull out somebody's skills in an interview, but this also seems pretty challenging. Can you maybe give us even a more specific of an example? Like what you've got my curiosity piqued. Are you setting them up in sort of a sales scenario and giving them a theoretical objection, or are you like taking them on personally? Like, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so if you have a multi-stage process, right, which is most ideal. So first stage is going to be simple as like just that interview, and you're going to do probably real see, probably hopefully some role plays with them live. And I like to eliminate some of their concerns or objections, which is, well, I don't know your industry yet. I don't know your product, et cetera. So I literally say, hey, listen, I want you to imagine you're at your current company selling the same thing. This is what happens. How do you respond? Right. So that's the first stage. If they do a good job with that, what I do recommend next is have them actually go on live sales calls. Right. So take them on
Mm,
your top reps, have them go on the calls, and how do they carry themselves? How do they?
mm,
What kind of questions do they prepare? Where do they really like? Are they even on time? What's their preparation? Because this is also their time to talk to someone on the team to see if it's a good fit for them as well. So all those things can give you a really good idea because of that. So for example, back in corporate, that's what we would do. One of the stages was we bring them back in. We were field reps, meaning in person. They would hang out for half a day, and they would go into the field with my team and they
mm,
hang out. They have lunch together. They go out. They maybe get breakfast together. They're going to the field to meet the prospects. They're cold calling together. They're doing all those things. So that way, they're able to get a real taste of the job. Number one, but also we got to see what they were like. And I'd always have my top reps. I would say, hey, listen, have them take over parts of the call, have them do certain parts of it, and see how they
mm.
feel. Now, if they're like gung ho and ready to go, they're like, yeah, give me the ball, let's go. Which I like people who are like, who have that type of drive. If they were like, well, they have a bunch of excuses. Well, again, that tells you something. On top of
Mm,
that, the questions they would ask my rep told me a lot about them as well. Because whatever they asked my rep about would tell me what's probably really on their mind, what's most important to them. And if they were asking things that just seem kind of out of what I want to hire, like maybe they just seem like a person like, oh, how many hours do you work a week? Oh, you have to work 40 hours a week. Oh, really? Like, oh, I don't really like that. I only work like 10 hours a week. Well, that's probably not gonna fit long term wise, right? That's someone who's probably
mm.
gonna come in, do the bare minimum, and roll out.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I think leveraging the rest of the team is a really powerful way to do it and underutilized. You probably have to have a pretty good amount of trust with the members of your team as well, and kind of have
Right.
them on the inside baseball, as it were, on that front as well. The other thing I like that what you're saying there is, look, to be in business development and selling, especially B2B, but in any format, is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's right.
And so you're not even waiting to find that out. I really like that about the process. So there's a lot
Mhm,
more I'd love to talk about, but we've got three
mhm.
more areas to cover. Let's get into the system to put them through. So
Yeah.
same thing. Where is that lacking in
Mhm.
most companies from your experience, and what should that look like?
Yeah. So most companies, are the number one, they have an enablement team that puts together some sort of training, which is probably better. It's probably better than having nothing. First off, but they have something in place. But is it stuff that's actually theoretical, or is it actually what's actually happening in the field on the Zoom calls day to day, every single day in the life of a sales professional, right? And I find most of the time it's not, or it's put together by people who maybe I hate to say it, maybe they weren't even that good at sales. So they're not able to actually articulate and deliver it in a way that's actually going to improve their skill set, right? That's a very dangerous game, right? Or
Mm,
some companies have nothing. And kind of similar to what was like for me was they're thrown into the deep end because that was like good luck. Now, obviously that leads to very, very terrible results. And I always equate to if you want to run a high performing sales team, it's like running a high performing sports team, right?
mm,
If you have a really good coach, the coach has a system in place, and they take a player who's already good, they put into the system, and they're a freaking rock star. But they're able to do it
mm,
repeatedly. So in comes one rep, out comes a rock star. In comes one rep, out comes another rock star. And you want to think about your system like the same way. And you want to get super granular, right? And I think it's important also how you stagger and develop the training. So, for example, even for my own company, when a new hire starts, we have literally, no joke, the entire sales process, step by step, completely broken down, filmed into modules and recordings for every part of the sales process. Now, that's not even the first part of that system. The first part is actually indoctrination into massive belief that the solution that we deliver has world class results. That's actually the
mm,
first thing I think we should got to focus on, right? Because most companies focus on product knowledge, which that's important to a certain extent. But what's even more important is the belief and conviction a sales professional has when they're actually having conversations with a sales or the prospect. Because you get the best process in the world, but if they don't have conviction or belief, they're not going to be able to convey that in their conversation and their questions and anything that they do. So even the first stage of the training, my new hires go through for my company, it's literally indoctrination. So I literally walk them through case study after case study after case study, testimony and examples of success from our program. And
Mm.
it's from tangible results to intangible. So it's from actual results, from whether it's reps who are two, three, four, five xing their income in a single year, to getting promoted, to how confident they feel, to the stress reduced, to all these things that's really, really important to them. So I have them go through all that first before even learning about the product is. And it's really, really important because this now sets them up for success. Like, oh, I believe it now. So now they're going to be much more open to learning everything else and how to actually deliver this transformation. So then from there, we go to obviously a little bit basic product knowledge, which is important to a certain extent, but it's not that important still. But then actually literally go through everything. So it's not just, and how we make cold calls or how we do outbound or how we win discovery. It's literally, how do you structure your day? What are the mental models you want to have in place when you think about selling and running these calls? So we
Mm.
go through it. I bring down step by step by step by step by step. On top of the whole process that's broken down, there's frameworks and templates so they can actually implement very quickly all these things, right? I take them behind the scenes. I even incorporate 10 different recorded live calls of me on calls so they can see how it's actually executed when they see all of it together. So they can learn
Mm.
piece by piece and they stack the pieces together. And then on top of that, they also then have live calls of me they can watch of me going through the thing. And there's even more training than me taking a live call myself and dissecting my own live call. Breaking out,
Mm.
here's what I did here. Here's why. Here's the psychology behind this. So they can understand not just what to do or how to do it, but also why it works. So now
Yeah.
you're getting a fully comprehensive way of learning by doing that. And when you do that, when you do it that way, you actually start building skills. You actually start
Mm.
increasing skills and knowledge, right? Now,
Yeah.
on top of that whole system that they go through, which is all modularized, like we also have weekly meetings. So every Monday and Wednesday, we have team meetings, right? So we're
Mm.
we're doing training, we're discussing, and we're very live, we're very present. So we're keeping the skills ongoing, just really, really sharp as a result. So that's part of the system. So that's from onboarding all the way through. Because reality
Mm.
is I don't know about you, but I can watch a video one time, read a book one time, but I'll remember maybe 10% of it max. When I
Right.
watch it a second time, when I read the book a second time, watch a movie a second time, it reinforces I learn new things, right? And that's why it's so
Mhm.
key to always constantly be sharpening the axe, sharpening the sword. That's why two is key, because when you have a system like that, now you have a common language, you have common skills you're developing, and we have a baseline to work off of and to refine over time with steps 3 and 4.
So it sounds like you've got to have a real, a passionate leader to make this
Yeah,
work. Would you agree? I mean, you can't just plug
yeah,
this into somebody who is maybe a good teacher or maybe they're
mhm,
a good organizer. Those are great
mhm,
skills, highly useful in business. But it
mhm,
sounds like for this, you need a real champion, a
mhm.
real passionate person who loves, eats, sleeps, breathes sales to lead this thing. Am I on point?
Well, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you have a couple options here, right? You can be a sales leader who does not do things like this. And what's going to happen is you'll have probably 30, 40, 50% plus turnover. So what ends up happening is they'll kill your growth. And you're always
Mm.
trying to fill open territories, and you'll be way more stressed out. And you won't actually be able to effectively be a great sales leader. You go from job to job. That's one option. Or number two, you realize one of the core skills you have to develop as a sales leader is, how do I make my team the best version of them? And when
Mm.
you realize that, this is merely a means to the end, if you will, right? There's many ways to skin a cat. This way I found to be most effective for reducing turnover. So for example, I'll give you a very simple example, right? So, well, one of the sales team I took over years ago, they were typically doing about $8 million in total contract value a year, right? Which was okay, not very much for the size of the team that they had. I took it over, started implementing this system, right? Modified for that company as a different company, and we went from 8 million to 23 million in a couple of years total contract value every single year, right? And the difference was because now we had a system, took turnover from 50% down to 17%, right? And
Mm.
that's including people that I'm terminating because they simply can't hack it, right? So think about that. When's the last time you heard of a sales team who had less than 20% turnover, right? It's very rare.
Mm.
It very rarely
That is.
happens, right? For the whole year. So,
Yeah.
and the reason is because when you have all the components together, the pieces are simple, but they're like they're fundamental legs to the stool. when you have them all
Mhm.
together, it builds a really strong foundation and allows you to have replicatable success. And this is actually how I was able to, go from that team of 20, leading 20 reps to getting promoted, leading team of 85 with multiple leaders in between. Because and then repeating that same system over and over because now at a bigger org, right? But you can't
Mm.
do that with a system. Otherwise, you feel like you're chasing your tail. But you have to have a
Mm.
system to actually scale and grow your actual business.
Yeah. You put me in mind of what one of my friends and a former client of mine says, Grant Cardone, that it's going to be hard one way or the other. It's going to be hard when
Mhm.
you don't succeed, and it's hard to succeed. Why not just have it be hard and succeed? I didn't quote him
That's
directly,
right.
but he says something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of versions of that, and
Right.
it sounds like there's some work involved. But there's a lot. You're conveying an awful lot of passion, and you
Mhm.
almost are. You've got to be sold on it yourself. I love how you
Mhm.
focused on that as well early on when you are coming into a company and it's like I'm following a bunch of rules and I'm spitting out a bunch of facts and I'm just going to be judged on my performance. That
Mhm.
feels very different from this. Hey, we do some great things for our clients and you're
Mhm.
sold on that. And now I've got this. I mean, you can actually feel really good about your service because I think sales does get a bad name because it's all about pushing people where this is more
Mhm.
about serving people. I mean, even the way you're
That's right.
describing the training and management role sounds like
Mhm.
a true coach, and the job of the
Mhm.
coach is to make the player successful, right?
That's right.
He or she is actually invested in making them get it done, helping them improve all
Mhm.
the time, every day. There's a lot more, man. You're getting me excited about this. I love all the the aspects of selling. Sometimes it
Uh,
becomes a little too much of a system. This is some
mhm.
really great stuff though about building humans. So we got what
Mhm.
I'm hearing from you is all right. Plug the right people into a great
Mhm.
system that kind of ramps them into this culture
Mhm.
of yours in the right way, and then you have a set of disciplines that kind of keeps that it kind of looks like this, right? Then you kind of keep the growth going over time. So that takes the form of role play and
Mhm.
also live call coaching. So let's get some best
Mhm.
practices to the listener on those two to close out our conversation today.
Absolutely. So role playing is so I used to call it real playing because I think the mistake a lot of people make with role playing is they kind of let's just say if you're the sales leader and you're having your rep role play with you and you're the prospect, most of them I find most of those leaders act like just like an easy prospect. But the truth is most prospects are kind of hard, especially if you're doing cold outbound. So
Hmm.
we would do real plays. I would real play with my team every single week, right? And I still do it
Hmm.
to this day, right? But there's a way to do it. So, for example, if we're going to reteach a new concept, I would teach the concept, and then I would pick someone on my team that I knew would probably bust me up a little bit and be really tough to be the salesperson or to be the prospect. And I would be the salesperson, and then I would role play the concept live, and I want them to be tough on me, giving me objections, so they could see me
Hmm.
do it live and just handle it, running the process
Hmm.
I just taught them and then I'd
Hmm.
have them do it. And then I would be the toughest prospect possible. I would we would role play the toughest situations because what I wanted to do was build their muscle memory, build their rejection tolerance, and really improve their skills. Because when you start thinking this way and you practice for the worst possible situations, when you're actually live on those calls, it's never all those bad things add up together. It's only a couple of those things. So it becomes
Hmm.
easy. So let me give you a really specific example. So, for example, when we role play cold calling, I'll role play. I'll role play and prepare. I'm like, I want you to prepare for 4 to 5 no's. 4 to 5 no's. That's how we role play. That's how we real play. And we go through 4 to 5 no's. And like first, when we do it early on, they're not very good. They're kind of good, maybe one or two. And then over time, with consistency, every single Wednesday, that muscle gets bigger and stronger. So over time, suddenly before you know it, now they're strong. They can handle 4 or 5 no's. And what happens when they're actually on the phones? They get maybe 2 or 3 no's. So when they're
Yeah.
expecting 5, they only get 2 or 3. It's
Hmm.
laughable. It's like, oh, that's
Hmm.
it. That's all you got. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why the role
Hmm.
plays are so critical. But you have to do it consistently. The mistake many people make is they only role play when the team is underperforming. They only train when the team is underperforming. But the
Yeah.
reality is the top 1% sales teams or top 1% professional athletes of the world, they don't practice when they struggle. They practice all the time, right? Because the truth is, pros practice more than they play. Amateurs play more than they practice. They never practice and they just want to play the game. And thus, they're never ready to show up when it's time to show up. So that's really, really important that you as a leader are building this as a part of your system to implement consistently early on and later on as well. So even with new hires, the role plays were much more free. We role play every single day as a new hire, every single day
Mm,
because I knew they're early, they're excited, they have that rookie energy. I know it's going to fade. I'm going to make sure early on, within the honeymoon stage, I'm going to maximize it. I'm going to make sure we're leveraging the energy in the right way. We're channeling it into advancing skills. And when you advance their skills that way, when things get tough, because it will get tough, they're pretty strong. They're more bulletproof, right? And then the last piece is live call coaching. The mistake many leaders make is they only listen to calls when there's maybe issues. Oh
mm,
no, we're not closing anymore. What's going on? Let me listen to calls, right? If even that. Or they say, oh, I'm too busy for calls. I don't have time to listen to calls. I'm too busy. I got like, well, no. Your number one KPI is results, your team's results, right?
mm,
What is going to drive your team's results the best? If your reps are the best. You can't close
mm,
every deal for your rep, but you can make your team better, right? So listening to calls, being live with the calls is really, really important because you can see live now how are they implementing these real plays that they're doing on the off time live on the calls? How are they actually implementing these things you've been teaching them? How are you course correcting? And that's really important because now you can also, number one, not just course correct it, but also you can recognize the behaviors and then reinforce the ones you want to see keep going. So, for example, hey, Marcus, you did a really good job here with that objection, and you didn't just try to handle it, you dove in deeper, you empathized them, they really felt heard, and you got so
mm,
clear that their initial surface level objection wasn't even real. It's something totally different. So, really good job uncovering that. So now it's like,
mm.
cool. It's reinforcing the right behaviors. You're actually being a leader now, and then you can coach the incorrect behaviors, right? And that's really important. This is something that's happening all the time, right? So even back in corporate, when I had a sales team of 20, I was in the field with my reps at least 4 half days a week, meaning about 5, 6 hours each time. I was riding with a sales professional in the field, going to the points with them. Not sitting there with a clipboard, just like trying to like check mark and judge them. Not at all. We're team selling. I'm learning from them, they're learning from me, right? I might say, hey, listen, this next call, I want you to run the front part. I run the back end. Okay. And let's switch, right? Hey, good job here. Let's focus on the next call. Let's try focusing on this now. So what happens is I'm making them stronger over time, right? When you do live call coaching or you're riding with your reps or hanging out with your reps, it's not about let me beat you up and find out all your wrong areas. It's let me reinforce the right behaviors and also find some areas to help improve. And when you do it consistently, your reps also now realize you're in it to help them. You actually want to help them get bigger. You want to help them maximize the skills that will improve their livelihood the fastest. So when you actually truly understand that and you realize leadership is about true service, it becomes a different game. If you just sit back and try to be an armchair quarterback, then your team will struggle. You'll have high turnover, and they'll ultimately and eventually fail and quit you over time.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of great insights here, and our conversation has already gone by so quickly, Marcus. I love it. There's a lot of great um, so I think food for thought for the listener to
Mm.
go further. Like, am I missing opportunities to give positive reinforcement to my team? I mean, how important is that? Am I actually getting out in front and leading from the front? When's the last time I took a call? When's the last time I actually showed by example? So you really challenged the listener, and I'm grateful to you for doing that, Marcus. I
Mhm.
guarantee a lot of our listeners are going to want to go further with your insights. How can they best do that? You've got a nice offer for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of ways. Number one, you can find me on LinkedIn. Connect me on LinkedIn. Also, my book, Six Figure Sales Secrets, a Wall Street Journal best-selling book. You can get a free copy. Just cover shipping handling by going to the link right below here, which is venly.co/book. Get a free copy right there. So pretty awesome book. So definitely enjoy that. They'll help you, whether it's for you, if you're a sales leader, or for your sales team as well. Right? If you want to order in bulk, go to Amazon. It's a little bit easier for a bulk for your sales team to help them absolutely crush it in sales.
Love it. Well, we've arrived at that moment. It's time for live Q&A. So we've got a few more people that probably are going to be posting questions, but we've got a few that have already come in. We will veer over to that, and let's kind of get started with one here. So yeah, Levy's asking, do your methods you've been talking about work better with certain go-to-market strategies versus other ones? And if so, which is which?
Mm. Yeah, good question. I mean, I think ultimately, when I think about what I discussed today, these are frameworks, right? These are frameworks that you want to take and apply, right? Um, I think if we take something and say, hey, this will apply perfectly to the one strategy versus the other, that might be the wrong way to think about this because at the end of the day, nothing's binary. right? It's not right or wrong one way or the other way. It's how can I take the essence of what Mark's talking about, the framework here, and apply to this specific GTM strategy? When you start thinking this way, it's like, interesting. For example, like let's just say, for example, if you run a team that's all virtual remote, which is the majority of teams, what my team is, like you might be like, oh, I can't necessarily, oh, I can't go and get in the car and ride them going means like of course not. That wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't work that way. But what can you do, right? For example, can we start putting a new software so we can actually start doing call recordings, and then we build into our weekly calendar where every week as a team we're going to be listening to one of the recorded calls and listen together as a team and coaching through it, right? So you can still apply the principles the same way. I wouldn't get stuck in necessarily the exact specific things because it's the concept that you're able to apply that actually help your team improve.
Yeah, there's actually, I think probably behind that question, it seems like when you're talking about getting out there and getting to a lot of high volume of conversations, you probably have to have a pretty good marketing team, or really, it needs to be enough going on that side, right? I mean, can you just make a cold, get a dialer going and do enough cold calls to make this work? That's kind of my additional question. Is that still
Mm.
working today, or are we finding that's more difficult? So we got to have a great marketing division to
Well,
back us up.
yeah, 100%, right? So here's the thing. I'm also a firm believer. You can have results, or you can have reasons for not being successful, right? And I've been part of teams and I've been part of organizations where, frankly, the market is just not that good. So, you're 100% responsible for that, right? So if that's going to be the case, as a leader, are you feeding into that same reason why your teammate can't be successful, that they don't have enough leads? Or if that is a reality, what could you do now to set them up for success? How can you empower them? How can you teach them how to use Sales Navigator, build highly targeted lists, and start having them do outbound to fill the funnel up? Marketing, for sure. In the perfect world, marketing is a perfect alignment with sales, and one feeds the other. That'd be the best situation possible. But in some situations, it just won't be that perfect. So, whatever situation you're being thrown into, um, you want to be able to maximize it. How can I maximize? How can I eliminate it as a problem? So, for example, even like if you were to, I would argue that cold calling still works. Some people disagree with that, but not cold call in the sense of let me buy a crappy, terrible list, upload it to a power dialer, and start ripping through and making calls. That's a terrible way to go about it.
Hmm.
Instead, the idea should be more of okay, maybe marketing's not necessarily good, so how can we generate a highly curated list, right? Then we just build and work off of. In fact, maybe some people listening out there or watching, they don't know what a power dialer. I don't have a power dialer. I don't have this. I don't have these fancy these sales things. I don't have this tech stack. That's okay. Well, same idea. Okay, what can you do instead? Well, can you go and start searching out and building your own list? Maybe it's in Google Sheets of hyper targeted prospects who are the right ICP, ideal customer profile, and start outbound calling those people. Do your research in advance, right? And build the list properly. So when you go down the list, you actually can have intelligent conversations. So you actually have smart conversations, right? So you can still apply the same thing, but if the rep doesn't have enough calls, then there's a bigger problem at play here. It could be a marketing issue, and that doesn't really matter. Like the problem may still exist, but it's still the responsibility of the sales team and the leader to solve the problem. That's how you want to start thinking. When you start thinking that way, you never worry about leads, and you just worry about, hey, how can you worry more about customer success, being able to deliver what you said you're going to do, have them deliver on.
Yeah, I love that. Got 100% ownership on that. Let's see. Here's a question from Karen Bailey. She's asking, "What are your thoughts on structuring sales teams? SDRs versus AEs and all of that. I mean, do you have a few favorite ideas as to how that should be done?"
I think it's an interesting question, especially in today's time. I've read different books and different philosophies where it's heavy on this split off of STRs, AEs, and I think there's pros and cons to each. And I'm going to say right now, my opinion is probably a little bit biased in the sense that I was a full cycle rep. Meaning I didn't get the benefit of having someone outbound for me. I had to do
Mm,
everything. I cold called,
mm,
I did everything. I filled my
mm,
own funnel, I filled my own pipeline, I did everything. Right. It
mm,
also made me a better sales professional because of that. So
mm,
I'm not saying it's necessarily a broken model, But I think over time, because depending on the company, some of these SDR roles I've seen are almost like marketing roles versus like true outbound. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important to identify or define what is going to be the role of the SDR BDR, because sometimes it might not be the role that I'm thinking about in terms of them just doing outbound, right? And
Hmm.
some of those roles, I think eventually over time, like I think we're going to see, especially with AI and everything else, is we're going to see smaller sales teams. We're going to see relatively probably like a smaller SDR team, BDR teams, and they'll be leveraging AI to actually do outbound, right? Eventually, might get to the point where that's not even a thing anymore, right? And it might be just full cycle AE roles, and there's leveraging AE or leveraging AI on top of what they're doing, but they're still doing outbound too. So I don't think it's a perfect model, but I think it's important to understand like how are you define the role, what are you trying to optimize for, and then structuring it properly too.
That makes a world of sense. I like that. Let's move on here to so Juan Paniagua. I hope I said that
Mm.
right, Juan. Forgive me, brother. You mentioned needing to hire the right profile. Are you a fan of tests such as DISC or there's several others I could name here, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like this. I mean, I think I'm probably biased. I love those tests personally, 'cause I think you learn a lot about a person. Um, I think when you're interviewing, you're hiring the right profile. Whenever you're hiring someone, there's like the facts and the test results. There's kind of like the hard facts, if you will, the logical stuff, and there's also the emotional stuff too, right? It's like how do you actually feel with them as well. So I'll give you an example. So um, if you couldn't tell by just this conversation, even on disc profile, I'm a strong D. All right, like that's just this is how I am. I'm a hard charger. If you could tell.
Would never
Now,
have guessed. I'm
yeah, I
shocked to
know.
hear that.
I
Yeah,
know, I
yeah.
know. So, and I've interviewed, people. Like, we didn't have any tests like that, but I could tell based on the conversation. I'm like, they're probably a D as well, which is cool, right? Which is cool. But like when you talk with them, just like anything else, even with a strong D, there's good and bad ones, right? And overall, the person now I could feel was not going to really align to the rest of the team, because I think when you're building a strong team, it's really important that number one, you're hiring the right profile, but it's not just for the role, but also for the team and where the team's going to go. What gaps does the team have? So,
Hmm,
for example, in the last company I was with in corporate, I would hire a lot of people over time, right? And they kind of had a profile. I don't want to say the profile because it can seem totally weird, but they kind of profile that would kind of hire intentionally. Right? It's a very. I'm like, okay, so and it's like if you didn't fit this profile, then you probably wouldn't get hired. That wasn't like how they would interview, but it just seemed that way. You see these teams like everyone looks the same, acts the same. That's
mhm.
dangerous. You
Yeah,
have this like homogenous team, the same ways of thinking, same age group. It seemed like everyone kind of looked the same way, acted the same way. That can be very, very dangerous. And
hmm,
I think it's really important when you hire people, you are hiring people with different strengths, actually lift the team up because as a whole, they're actually better, right? And what was interesting was everyone else had a very homogenous team, and my team when I started building this team, looked very different personality types. And so, like, I'm very intense. I have people that are not as intense. I have people that are more emotional. We had more people that are
hmm,
just like it was like we had a lot of females on our team, different ages, different background, different gender. So we had like a
hmm,
really diverse team. And if you looked at my team like, at the annual sales meeting, it just looked different than the
hmm,
makeup of other teams.
hmm.
Strangely enough, a year or two later, we're one of the top teams year after year after
Yeah,
year, right?
yeah.
Because we had a diversity of thought. That's why I think you have to be careful a little bit because the instinct is going to be, hey, they're an X profile, we're only going to hire that.
Yeah,
So I much rather hire off, characteristics and values, and their beliefs versus just a personality. So take it all into consideration when you make a hiring decision.
yeah, yeah. I love what you're talking about there. The idea of it's put a couple ideas in my head. It reminds me of famous sayings that aren't exactly right until you make one little tweak. Like knowledge is power. It's a great saying. Well, only once it's applied, right?
That's right.
And
That's
well,
right.
diversity is our strength. Well, only once you're really unified on a common mission, then it is. If
That's
not,
right.
it's just a thing. I mean, it might or might not be, right?
Exactly.
So it
Exactly
sounds
right.
like you marshaled a team that did have common values. So when you use the word profile, you're not really talking maybe about the same thing somebody else might be. It sounds like it's more like a set of values and maybe some life choices. Maybe they want a little more for themselves. Maybe expand on it a little bit. What was that core of the profile?
Yeah.
Since there is that diversity around that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, so there's a few things, right? So like, there's gonna be simple stuff like I think it'll be pretty common across the board. Like, what's type of sales acumen do they have? I think it's important. Like instinctually, how do they engage with you? Like when you
Mm,
meet them, are they awkward? Are they
hmm
like do they even prepare for the conversation? Like that's like stuff. It's not really crazy, but it's kind of shocking that that should be a requirement, right? So that's really
mm,
important. I want to know are they adaptable, right? Do they have good
mm,
AQ? So, like,
mm,
know when things pivot, how do they adapt to that? So, I might ask a question like this: like, "Hey, give me a specific example of a time when you had a set plan in place, something catastrophic happened. What did you do next?"
mm,
And I want to find out exactly what do they do, and also how do they define catastrophic, right?
mm,
Like, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's like, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but like, like one of the questions I would ask, and this is kind of a good example. I would ask like, give me an example of something that was really challenging that you overcame and you were able to accomplish in life. I just want to hear generally speaking, right? And
mm.
no offense if this is you, but sometimes I'll get an answer like, oh, like I'm really proud that I went to college and I graduated. I'm like, wait, hold on.
That's
So were they
nice.
freely give you loans to go to school, you went and party and you graduated, you just got above a D. That's your proudest accomplishment, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
out, right? Like it's like so I'll stuff like that. I think is important as well. Someone
hmm
mentioned grit earlier. Like having a level like of grit and perseverance is
mm
really important. Like that's just like at the end of the day, I think the number one determinant for success is delayed gratification, right? Being
mm
able to do something consistently, even when it sucks and it feels
mm
like it's not desirable and you can't see the end. Are you able to persevere and push through? Because
mm
oftentimes we know in sales, the hardest territory to manage is right between the ears. So if we know it to be true,
mm.
that's basically what sales is all the time. So if you don't have that, what do you actually have, right? I think it's
Yeah.
really important, right? How about drive? I want to have a
Mm,
drive. Are they driven? Do they expect a lot of themselves? Like one of the worst things you can do is hire someone who has low expectations of themselves because when they
mm,
perform to a certain level, they're going to be good. They're going to be stagnant, right? Because they're not going to be able to push past it, right? So I'll give you a really simple example. So, and it's not necessarily what they've already achieved, but mostly what their goals are. So, for example, somehow I'll literally ask them like, "Hey, like, what do you want to make? What will be your dream income, and why?" And I want to find out what that number is, right?
mm,
And I'm not looking for like a massively high number by any means, but I want to understand the reasoning behind it, right? They're like, "Oh, I want to make 200K. Okay, cool. Like, why is it? I don't know. Just, I guess that'd be nice. Like it'd be nice to get there." Well, the reality is like that's not right. There's no true why or drive behind that, right?
mm,
Versus, hey, I'll make $200,000, and here's why: because my kid has like 30 different allergies. We're gonna go to this allergy institute. It's really expensive, so I want to save up money and take him there
mm,
to get rid of all his allergies. It's gonna cost X
mm,
amount. In order to get that, I have to do it. And you know what? I do it for my family. I do it for them because growing up, I never had the opportunity. So there's a fire inside, a drive that I can't create. They got to have
Yeah.
it. So I can cover some of these things as examples that hopefully it puts them in a highest likelihood to actually be successful. Because again, if you hire someone who's got low drive, low motivation, they're going to call in sick. They're not going to show up. When things get hard, they're going to give up. We don't want that. Every time you have turnover, every time the fire someone, every time someone like just quits, that
mm,
kills your growth. It
Yeah.
puts you back many months, costs you thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. The average bad hire, I've seen a lot of numbers, can cost you anywhere from 60 to 120 grand. And so it's
Absolutely.
definitely something to consider very carefully. Well, Marcus, it's
Mhm.
been a value packed episode. I'm grateful to you for being here. You're a fantastic guest. You're welcome back anytime. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, and thank you to our listening audience. You've made the show the success that it is. If you've been enjoying the content as much as I know you have been, go check out some of our previous episodes. Our podcast is called The Evolve Sales Leader. You can find it anywhere you like to consume podcasts. And of course, a big shout out to our sponsor, Overpass. They are the world's leading platform for quickly hiring business development talent from anywhere in the world in the minimum amount of time, a theme for our show today. It's free to open up your account at overpass.com, and you can quickly find 5, 10, 15 fantastic people to help you grow your company. Check it out at overpass.com. Well, that's going to do it for the show today. We'll see you the next time. Same station, same time. Signing off. You guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next time here on the Evolve Sales Leader.